chat will also be recorded. And the reason that we're recording is so that anybody who can't make it today can still access the event and see what we talked about.
Juan is saying that he can't see the interpreter. Juan's not.
The interpreter's on the screen. Sorry.
He should pin the interpreter for himself by hovering over their box of their video and pinning. I'll type it if he can't see.
Yeah, if he's not able to see the interpreter, he's probably going to need that through a chat message or something.
Okay, well, Mariela, why don't you start going over the features, and maybe you can show the different features of the Google Meet on, I don't know, on your screen or not, and I'll type about this.
We're ready to go. One is pinned the interpreter. We're ready.
All right, cool. So the Google Meet functionality, there's a few things that you can do on the Google Meet platform. The first thing that you can do on the Google Meet platform is you're probably seeing my face at the top of your screen. And so what you want to do is take your mouse and drag it all the way to the lower right-hand corner. And in a space right there, something will come up like a white tab, and there will be a button that says Turn on Caption. So there are a few buttons that you see. So right underneath at the very center, there's a red button that is to hang up. And next to it, there's a button to mute yourself. So all of you, please mute yourself, or Katarina and I will mute you. Next to that button, you will see a button that is for video. So if you do not want to be seen via video, you can click on that to ensure your privacy. And then finally, if you want to pin the interpreter, you will see that one of the items that you should be seeing on your screen is a gentleman that should be on your right-hand corner. There should be a number of squares where there is a gentleman, maybe in one of the corners that is interpreting. If you are not able to see this person, what I want you to do is go on those three dots on the right-hand corner at the very bottom, and then click Change Layout. Click on that button, and then click Spotlight. At one point, Don should come up if you are not seeing him yet. So then if you can make some sound on your screen so that you become the spotlight.
Yes, can you see me now?
Yes. So okay. Now there should be a button under Dan, and that should be Pin. If you have any questions, please let us know in the chat. So with that said, these are the different ways that you can use the Google Meet platform to change the layout, to see the interpreter, to turn on the captioning. All right, that said, back to you, Katarina.
Thank you. So I am just now going to invite the CILSF team to start the official introductions, and we're so excited to be here today.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Haley Collier, and I am the Interpreting Services Coordinator for the Center for Independent Living of South Florida. I'm so happy that everyone has joined into our event today. It's going to be very insightful and educational and hopefully fun as well. I've already enjoyed listening to the music or watching Mariela dance. So the mission of the CILSF is to empower people of all disabilities and ages to maximize their abilities and live independently, as well as to challenge barriers that prevent us from becoming a fully integrated community. And today's event is to open up discussion and spread awareness about the concept of ableism and how this concept of ableism has impacted the lives of the disability community as a whole, but specifically how it's impacted the lives of the ladies from Chicas Talk Disability, Mariela, the founder of Project Hearing, Katarina, the founder of Blindish Latina, as well as a fellow CILSF staff member, Juan Fumero, our Deaf Services Coordinator. They are going to share about their backgrounds, their upbringings, different experiences that they've encountered throughout their life relating to ableism, as well as their efforts to help dismantle the ableism belief and to build a community of awareness, accessibility, and inclusion for all. And with that, I'll pass it along to Juan Fumero.
Thank you so much, Haley. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh,
I hope everyone's doing well.
One of the challenges that I have for the Google Meet platform is that the way that the buttons are placed, you have to like scroll at the very bottom to unmute yourself, and there's like an awkward pause where you're like, trying to get to the unmute button. Anyway, yes. Hi everyone. My name is Mariela Paulino, and
Mariela, I wonder if sometimes you're not hearing the way that you usually do during the events, because somebody was speaking and Juan was the one that was going to be talking at this moment. So
I thought you said that we were going to, I've been depending on the captioning, so I totally thought that you were somebody was telling me to start. Apologies.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I understand. Okay, well, thank you very much. Again, Haley Collier, thank you so much for the introduction. And let me just introduce myself. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juan Fumero Castillo. I work with as a Deaf Services Coordinator for CIL of South Florida. And I specialize in the Miami-Dade County area. I'm very excited to be part of this presentation today on this Google Meets platform. I think this is a wonderful event for the deaf community during Deaf Awareness Month. And I want to thank everyone for, for providing the interpreter. I appreciate the interpreting services that we have here today. So Haley did mention that we are on this platform, and that we should hope we're going to have fun. And I agree. I think we're going to have a good time during this presentation today.
And with that, we will give it to you guys, Mariela and Katarina. Thank you.
I want to confirm there are no hearing things. So we're good. Ready? Okay, cool. Woo. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Mariela Paulino. I am the founder of Project Hearing. And I started Project Hearing because I really wanted to create a space where we could fight against the stigma around disability, where we could have open conversations, where we could have really people talk about some of the challenges that they have over the internet, like with what just happened, with me not hearing and missing the conversation, and being able to create a safe space where we all create a space of accessibility and inclusion for each other. So thank you to everyone for making that happen. So I wanted to change the narrative from something that is infantilizing. By the way, if you hear sirens outside, I am in New York City. It's just a part of the experience. So I wanted to create it as a place where we can have conversations about our real vulnerabilities and our real lives in such a way that we can encourage self-empowerment, education, and community support. And while I was doing that work, I met Katarina, and the way we met is really amazing. And I'll get to that in just 1 minute. So Katarina, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Katarina Rivera, and I'm the founder of Blindish Latina, which is a platform where I'm talking about my experience as a professional disabled Latina woman. And one of the reasons that I started it is because I had come to a point in my disability journey where I felt confident in my disability and wanted to help other people. And I also wanted to increase awareness because I noticed that even my close family and friends had so much that they did not understand about disability. So in sharing my story as part of Blindish Latina, I've already seen such a great response and the potential for an impact where I can improve inclusion and accessibility for others. And that is something that I'm really hoping to build. It's been quite an honor to partner with Mariela and work together. So we have a platform called Chicas Talk Disability that is always hosting events and conversations from our perspective, which is not often represented in the mainstream narrative about disability as Latinas. So we're really excited to have this event in partnership with the Center for Independent Living of South Florida. So today, what we're going to talk about is our disability stories, our journeys, why we built a community like Chicas Talk Disability, and how having this community can counteract ableism, both ableism in society and internalized ableism that we find within ourselves. So Mariela is now going to share a few ground rules that will help us have a very safe conversation today. So Mariela.
And before Mariela starts, can we swap the interpreter, please?
So Brian is the new interpreter. So Brian, what I am going to need you to do is so that if the person that needs Brian does not see Brian on the screen, there are 3 buttons on the corner of your screen, lower right-hand corner. Click on those buttons. Brian, before this person does that, I need you to unmute yourself and make a sound.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
All right, so now you should be able to see Brian. Go ahead and pin him. All right, so let's get this party started. So that's basically going to be the protocol whenever we have to like switch between interpreters. Let's do this. So ground rules. So as we are having these conversations, we already talked about the buttons at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead and mute yourself, so that as we're just talking and having these great conversations, you don't just like randomly like go into the conversation with like the TV blasting. So make sure that you unmute yourself. Also, be respectful. We are creating a safe space to have these conversations, and they're sometimes difficult and a little bit awkward. So be respectful when you're sharing your opinion. Finally, again, we're trying to be a safe space, and we're also trying to be unfiltered. So be honest about who you are, do it in a respectful way, and make sure that you just are aware of everyone around you. Also, and this is super important, Katarina and I are going to be talking about our individual experiences as people with hearing disabilities. That is, people that are oral and people that have tools that allow them to hear. Like I have the cochlear implant, Katarina has her hearing aid. These are our unique experiences. They are not representative of the entire population of people with hearing disabilities. So just be conscious that as we talk about our own experiences, they are our own, and they can serve as maybe a source of encouragement for you to do things, but do not use our individual experiences as the experiences of the deaf community. And then, let's see where we are. And this is the most important rule of all. Be sure to ask questions. Be sure that you bring your full, authentic self with you, to share with us for the next hour that we'll be talking. Be sure to use the chat functionality. It's all the way at the right-hand corner and the top right. So there's a button there that says chat. Click on that, and let's continue the conversation. With that said, I'm going to pass it along to Juan and Haley.
All right, thank you so much. So just to kick this off, I'm going to share a little bit about my background and why I do what I do currently, and then I will pass it along to Juan. I myself, I do not have a disability. I went to a school where I had several deaf friends. I grew up with interpreters around me. So that's essentially what interested me in the interpreting profession and what introduced me into deaf culture. But what I'm really excited for about today's event is to show how every deaf, hard of hearing person has a very different background, upbringing. They use different modalities, they use different tools, and it works for their specific lives. And I think that's such an amazing thing. And I think that there's a lot of learning that everyone can do in terms of that, because essentially, if you hear deaf, you assume cannot hear. And while that is the case in some aspects, that's not the case for all. So I'm really excited to learn from Katarina and Mariela, and as well as Juan, and because I know that you guys use the oralism approach and cochlear implants and hearing aid, like you just stated, and captioning systems. And I know Juan utilizes different tools, such as the ASL interpreters that we have here today. So the reason I got into this profession is because I did see a lot of injustice on all fronts and a lot of education needed. And I was truly inspired, but also I love it. So I love advocating. I love the language of ASL, as well as English. I love the different approaches. Prior to working with the Center for Independent Living of South Florida, I worked as an educational interpreter. And in that realm, you work with children and teenagers from all over the world. They all have different language bases, essentially, whether that's English or Spanish or a different language in and of itself. Some have had access to sign language, some have not, some have a little bit of hearing, some do not. It's just the whole spectrum. And so as an educational interpreter, you approach that individual with the tools that they use for success, the tools that best fit them as individuals. And so that's why I'm excited about this event as well today, in terms of the ableism mentality and what we can do to counteract that and learn. So with that, I will pass it to Juan to share about his story.
Hello again, and good afternoon to everyone. In case you missed it, my name is Juan Fumero, and I am fully deaf. I mean, completely deaf. I'm from Puerto Rico, the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. And I'm very proud for that. I'm from Catamaran. My parents found out that I was deaf. They were really intrigued, and they were trying to learn from other deaf and disabilities and how they should approach it. And my aunt had one word that she would speak often when I was a baby, and I couldn't hear it. And, you know, they would often say no or calm down or different things like that. But I wasn't hearing any of those things, and I wasn't responding. So my aunt was taking that opportunity to let my parents know that there's something different here that he's not hearing. Mariela, I see you have your hand up. Is there something you needed to say?
So Juan, I am not able to see you in any of my tiles. Can you make some sound on your screen so that I can see you in my tiles?
Me? You want me to
You make
speak?
a sound and you'll come up. And unmute yourself.
So I have to open my microphone, right?
Actually, hold on. Oh, I'll change the layout. Let me see if I see. No, I don't see Juan at all. Hold on. Oh, I see you now. I'm good. What do you think, Juan?
Does that mean that other people can't see me as well?
It means that
So can
unless they
everybody
change
see me?
their, if you don't see Juan, just change your tiled view. That's it. Juan, you're good. People should know how to do it. And if you don't, just go into the chat.
Okay, so do I need to go back and repeat what I've said, or
No.
how should I proceed? Just keep going. Okay, I'll keep going. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Okay, hold on one second. So my aunt entered into the kitchen, and she was making some noise on the stove. You know, she had a fork and she was banging it on a pot or something like that. You know, and everybody was looking. You know, took notice of it, but not me. I was sleeping soundly. I didn't cry. I didn't make a noise. I didn't do anything. My aunt screamed, "He's deaf!" You know, and of course, all my family was arguing, saying, "No, no, of course he's not deaf." So the next day, my father told my mother that she needed to bring me in for an evaluation. And they were both very patient, of course, but they were crying and they were concerned. And, you know, really, Puerto Rico didn't have the services at that time, you know, even providing a test, you know, they didn't have that back then, the best services. So at that time, they were saying maybe he would be able to hear later. So, you know, my parents waited a few months, you know, months went by, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. And then my aunt moved out to New York. And she was in a hospital there in New York and was discussing with a doctor about her nephew in Puerto Rico. And she was explaining to me that it was impossible for him to hear. And so once they had that conversation, my aunt called my parents, told my parents that it was imperative for them to make an appointment or to book a flight and come down here and see the doctor. So they did. They came down to New York. We had a testing done in New York, and it was found that I was fully deaf. You know, so now we had to roll up our sleeves and decide what we're going to do, you know. So at that time, you know, my parents flew back to Puerto Rico because they were both working. And we found that there was a deaf school that was available. But also, because the deaf school was not where my parents were living, it was going to be a commute. So it required that my mom was going to have to quit working to make that commute because it was several hours away. And at that time, I was learning Puerto Rico American Sign Language, PRASL. And then later, as I got into the upper grades, it changed into ASL. But it wasn't just ASL. There was also some oralism in there as well. And then, not long after that, I was transferred to a private school that was not a deaf school where everything was in sign language, and I was using an interpreter. And then I ended up at a university where I was the only deaf person. This is a university in Puerto Rico, obviously. You know, in America, it's a little different, but in Puerto Rico, you know, we have very limited resources, and, you know, we're not as exposed to everything that they have in America. And the instructor was not very knowledgeable on how to deal with disabilities, whether it was blind, deaf, whatever. So at that time, my goal was to work at the deaf school in Puerto Rico. I wanted to be a science teacher. So I transferred into some math courses. And I taught for 12 years. And then I met my fiance at a training institute. And I ended up moving here to Miami, Florida to be with my fiance. But we do travel back and forth to Puerto Rico very often. And now I've been working here at CILSF for the past 4 years. Just to let you know, my wife is hearing, and we're expecting a child soon. I'm going to be a new father any moment now. So yes, thank you guys. I appreciate that applause. So really, that's my background. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Mariela and Katerina.
One second. This is what I'm talking about, that the buttons are like so hard to like work with sometimes. 1 second. Go back to tile. Oh, that is fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that, Juan. Congratulations. When is the baby supposed to be coming?
This month, November. But I don't know the exact date. It could be any minute now.
Wait. This month? Oh, this November? Oh my goodness.
This November, yes.
Oh, are you gonna have a Sagittarius baby? Is it going to be a Sagittarius?
Ah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll find out. All right, so everyone, let's get started. So what I'll be talking about is disability journey. So let's get started. I think one is going to be so hard to tell your story, but I will do my best. So my disability journey is a little different than Juan's, and it's really interesting to me how Katerina, myself, and Juan are all three people that have hearing disabilities, and yet we all have had very different experiences. Haley, I also want to go back and just really acknowledge and thank you for sharing your story and your own experience as an ally. I think it's very, it makes me really happy that there are people like you out there, because I think that for us to be able to have conversations like this, and honestly, just really the team at the Center for Independent Living, you guys are doing amazing work. And Katerina and I really want to thank you again for creating this space. So thank you to all of you. And Juan, you are so amazing. So my disability journey is a little bit different. I'm Dominican. Me and Juan were kind of like neighbors. We have like this thing going on with like Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. And then Katerina's Cuban. Oh, we got a party here. We got a party. Yeah, we're going to have to play some.
We're like neighbors.
All right. So I lost my hearing at the age of 7 to bacterial meningitis. My sister, myself, and my mom emigrated to the United States when I was 7 years old. And then a few months after that, I contacted something that's called bacterial meningitis. It was kind of like, so there's 2 types of bacterial meningitis. There is bacterial and viral. And viral meningitis is like you get the common cold. Bacterial meningitis, basically what it does is your body starts attacking itself from the inside. Your skin just basically like rots away. And you, within 24 hours, your body just completely attacks itself. And that happened to me, and it happened just a few months after I had arrived to New York City. And in 10 people that get bacterial meningitis, as I've read it, there are 7 people that die. And of those 3 that survive from bacterial meningitis, only 1 survives that disease. And that 1 person that survives the disease often has missing limbs. It's really aggressive. And I was just very lucky because God loves me and I'm fabulous. And he was like, it's not her time to go yet. So my disability happened as a result of bacterial meningitis. And one of my last childhood memories is actually listening to Selena Quintanilla and being able to listen to a song on the radio and being able to like listen to her music. And so losing my hearing for me was a significant sense of loss. I promise I wouldn't have any emotion when I said this, but it's like, why am I? So it was tied to a significant sense of loss because you have a 7-year-old and they're listening to Selena Quintanilla and then suddenly they don't hear anything. And I think that is very important to acknowledge in the disability community that there are people that have been born with the body that God gave them, and that body is perfect and incredible. But then there are other people who had something and that had that something taken away from them. And for me, as a 7-year-old child, to be able to hear and then suddenly not hear anymore, that was really, really traumatic. And so not only that, but me losing my disability happened as a result of a language barrier, because my mom, again, we were just here a couple of months, and so my mom was talking to the doctor and telling the doctor what she was seeing. She was a nurse in the Dominican Republic, and that language barrier made the disease progress to the point that I lost a sense. I lost my hearing. And that happened, and that happened decades ago. And it's something that to this day I still feel. So there's a sense of loss to my diagnosis. However, even though that really shitty thing happened, it also gave me access as a person with a disability to have the incredible team of support and family and people that are allies that have encouraged me to do work like Project Hearing and She Can Talk Disability and bring each one of you to have this conversation about ableism. So to put it in perspective, yeah, I was a kid and this really shitty thing happened to me. And then I dealt with tons of ableism because I was dealing with a loss. And I just decided that I was like, you know what, fuck that. I'm really fabulous and I'm not going to let this really bad thing be the one thing that defines the rest of my life, and I'm way too fabulous. So that's my diagnosis. Katarina.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate hearing your story, even though I've heard it before, and also Juan and everybody.
Katarina,
yeah.
May I interrupt you quickly? Can we swap interpreters?
Yes, of course.
Okay, you need me to make some noise? You can spotlight me. Ready to go.
Okay, and if someone can just type in the chat the name of the interpreter, so people are looking to pin you.
This is Brian. I will do that.
Thank you. Okay, great. My official diagnosis is Usher syndrome. When I was born, my parents started to notice that as I started walking, I wouldn't respond to their calls when they would say my name. And so they started to see that I needed to get my hearing tested. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, they were able to find out that I had moderate to severe hearing loss. And I was immediately provided with services. My mother was a huge advocate, and I know that she worked really hard because it's challenging to navigate these systems. But I had hearing aids, I had special education for kindergarten, and then I was mainstreamed. Because I was so young, I don't have a sense of loss related to my hearing. I never had perfect hearing. I was born like that. And I adapted very well. So that was something that I felt I think, especially as a kid, you're sheltered as well because you're just mainly in school and with your family. But as you're an adult in the real world, my hearing has come up more. And especially when you're in an environment like college or attending events, you're changing context so much. But when I found out about my vision loss, that threw me for a loop. That was a really hard thing because it was a thing I wasn't expecting at all. I was 17 years old when I was diagnosed with Usher syndrome, and we didn't know why I had hearing loss, but Usher explains both of them. It affects both hearing and vision, and the vision is tied to, it's called retinitis pigmentosa. So other people can have retinitis pigmentosa, just that, and they have vision loss. It's the progressive vision loss with the deterioration of the retina. And you can also experience Usher syndrome where you're losing both your hearing and your vision over time. So the one that I have, the hearing is supposed to remain stable, but the vision loss is not. That is progressive. So I basically was the summer before I was going to college, and I remember that I had gone to camp, and we were going to, everybody, all my friends were running out into the darkness at night to play a prank on one of our instructors at camp. And as soon as I got outside, I stopped. Like, I couldn't see anything. But everybody in front of me was bounding and running down some steps and around a corner. And that was my first big warning that, wow, I'm different and what's going on. So it was really hard to know when I was so excited about going to college, I was going away for school, that all of a sudden I have a loss of vision and I felt like I had to be more careful. One story I always tell is like when I first got to college, everybody was going, how can I say this? People were partying, okay? Like the first week, I felt like I had no one that I could count on. And as a person with a disability, like I needed some help to be at a party. Like when it was dark, like sometimes I didn't know where the bathroom was. Sometimes I needed like help to get out. And you don't know anybody. So I saw people throwing up on the lawn, partying, and everybody for himself. And so I decided, okay, I'm not drinking. So I have to keep whatever faculties I do have, like with me. Like I have to use that. I cannot diminish any further. So I did not drink at all in college. And I actually was the sober driver. This is why my vision was good enough to drive. So the blindish girl was driving everybody to and from the parties. But it was really hard when I was first diagnosed. There's no information on the progression. The doctors didn't have good bedside manner. They couldn't tell me what my vision was going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years. Everybody is very individual. And my family, my parents were upset. I remember my mother especially looking for answers, looking for treatment, like what is out there. And she took us to Cuba. We had never gone to Cuba. She had immigrated when she was young. And she was like, okay, we're going to Cuba. I heard they have something for retinitis pigmentosa. And we went and we met with, I remember, a doctor for that and a medicine man. And the medicine man gave us a list of things to like eat or not eat. And one of those was white sugar. So I eat a very low sugar diet. And we were taking like some herbal pills. I don't know if they worked. I have no idea. But we take the pills from Cuba, from the medicine man. And I imagine for other people with disabilities, hopefully, I don't know if you can relate to that family. You just feel powerless, I'm sure, when there's like, what can you do when there's no treatment? There's no cure. You search for something, some type of action. So that's something that happened in my family. So now that we've kind of talked about my diagnosis, I'm just going to share, I think, I've already shared a story, but I'm going to share one story about kind of the different points of my disability journey. I think that in the beginning with my disability, I recognized it. I was not in denial, but I was, I think, in denial about getting services and kind of working more on what I could do surrounded to my disability. I kind of just within myself was adapting. I was coming up with stuff that I thought would work for me, but I did have things that would pop up. I remember that I knocked over some children when walking in the streets of New York because I was walking really fast and I don't see like below a certain level. I just wasn't seeing them. I think I had to knock down like 3 children before I was like, oh my gosh, I have to walk slower. Like and you're kind of confronted with ever-changing reality because the vision loss is progressive. But I didn't get services until 2012, and I was diagnosed in 2003. And I was actually surprised by that. I looked the date up specifically for this event. I really could not believe that. And I didn't get cane training for how to use a cane until 2016. So that was 13 years after my diagnosis. I probably could have benefited before, but it's really hard to use something visible like a blind cane and show everybody, hey, I'm different. I have a disability. People are awkward. People sometimes don't know how to help you. They don't know how to act around you, and they come up with all kinds of stuff, touching me in the street, thinking that I don't know how to do something, grabbing me, like that kind of thing. And when I used to spend a lot of time and energy on was like passing. So not wanting to do anything that would tip anybody off to the fact that I had a hearing or vision disability. So I was really concerned about like not having awkward moments, not falling down, always knowing where I was going. And I think the biggest turning point for me with using a blind cane and having a visible indicator of my disability is when I was traveling abroad and I started to use my cane when traveling, because it actually helped me so much. People were so much nicer to me and had positive assumptions of me, as far as she's not bumping into me on purpose, or she maybe could use some help. Let me ask her. So that was something that took a long time to get comfortable with, using a cane, and even just stepping into self-advocacy and being very clear about just what I need and acknowledging my disability, but not making it the biggest thing about me. So I'm going to pass it to Mariela now. She has a story to share.
I am here just like posting on Instagram. You're going to be getting a story tag from me in a minute. So thank you for sharing that, Katerina. So I think for me it was a little bit different. So in some of the stories, because of course they are different stories, but just like Katerina, they're similar but different. I was placed into a special education classroom after losing my hearing. Just again, the story of having normal hearing, losing my hearing, and then being immediately placed into a special education classroom. And that had happened because when it was time to place me in school, the school had me take a standardized test in English, which I was learning because I didn't learn English until after I lost my hearing. So English is a second language I picked up after being deaf. So they had me take these standardized tests in English, and of course I did horrible. And the standardized tests determined that I was to be placed in a special education classroom. My mom, who I don't know if she's joining the call. I don't think she is, but she was like, And my mom is a Dominican mom. Like my mom, you do not play with her. She is like, there's a saying in Spanish, ¿a dónde vamos y a quién hay que matar? That's what my mom's all about. My mother is a gangster. So she was like, no, the Department of Education is now going to place my child in a special education classroom. And she was explaining that the standardized test that they had given me was in English and all of this other stuff. My mother went so far as to get sued by the Department of Education twice for Child Neglect because my mom wanted to advocate for services for me, like being placed into an English-only classroom because the Board of Education wanted to place me in bilingual. My mom was like, no, I want my daughter to speak English. So she got sued for that. She was like, bring it on. She won. My mom wanted for me to have, what is it called? A hearing therapist at school. The Department of Education had this whole thing about interpreters not having to work at private school because the school didn't want to have to, take me aside for the interpreter. And my mom was like, my daughter is going to have her hearing teacher come to her school, bring it on. She won that. Like, my mom is a total badass. And so that's just really the type of growth that I had with my mom. I just always had someone in my corner advocating for me, which was a double-edged sword, though, because I always had someone advocating for me. That is only recently that I've learned how to advocate for myself. And that is really a word of warning to a lot of people, because it's critical. It would have been so important if when I was a kid, when I was 7, when I was 8, when I was 9, when I was 10, I can be as confident as I am now in advocating for captioning and advocating for interpreters, that kind of thing. So it's a double-edged sword in, always advocating for someone. So anyway, my identity as a person with a hearing disability didn't really click until I decided to move away from New York City, really move away from, my mom. I wanted to just, go out there and prove to people that I didn't need my gangster mom. I could do it myself. And there was just one point when I got pulled over by a police officer. Caterina, you can attest to this. I was driving in Virginia, and if you are speeding in Virginia, you will get pulled over. It doesn't matter if it's 1 mile. It doesn't matter if it's half a mile above the speed limit. You will get pulled over in Virginia. So I got pulled over for the first time because I was speeding. And the officer is giving announcements over the loudspeaker. I have a hearing disability. Those speakers to someone without a disability sounds like, please, ma'am, turn off your vehicle. To me, at that time, hearing the police car behind me, the alarms blaring, and the officer speaking, it sounded like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't know what he was saying. And so that whole situation was very scary, because just like the times we're living in now, this was during the Trayvon Martin situation. And so everybody was on edge. I was on edge. And so I just put my hands at 3 and 9, turned off my vehicle, and waited. The officer came over to my window, knocked on the window, and said, ma'am, I was giving you commands. He said something. I turned around before he said anything, actually. I said, officer, hearing disability, I have a cochlear implant. I didn't understand what you were saying. He said, ma'am, I was giving you commands. You were not compliant. And I said, well, I had my hearing disability. I couldn't understand what you were saying. When I said that, the situation diffused. And it's important for me to mention that the officer, when he exited his vehicle to walk towards my car, had the hand on the holster. So these are the types of situations that, because of miscommunication, split 2-second decision can escalate very quickly. So that was very scary for me. And so what I decided to do was that I decided to print stickers that I put in the back of my car that say, deaf driver. Because a police officer will only scan the back of your car for 2 seconds, see what kind of car you drive. Are you a National Rifle Association member? Are you a teacher? Are you a doctor? Who are you? So you only have a few seconds to grab a police officer's attention. And so I got those stickers for my car. And that was my second disability story. And then most recently, I think that my experience as a person with a disability has really been embraced, because I have acknowledged that I have a hearing disability. And so when you acknowledge that, instead of ignoring that, you're able to look for solutions to the problems you face. So, for example, when you realize that you have trouble communicating with a police officer when you are pulled over, I'm always thinking about solutions to all of these problems that happen within my reality. So that's basically where I am right now. And with that said, Katerina, let's pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mariela. I'm
Hi,
thinking
Katerina. I'm sorry. Before you
Mhm.
start, may we swap the interpreters again, please?
Okay, so can someone type who the new interpreter is in the, okay, perfect, I see that. Mariela, in the interest of time, to make sure we start digging into ableism, are you okay if we go into the ableism part? Okay, wonderful. So that basically we're going to talk now about ableism and internalized ableism and how has this affected our lives. So Mariela, would you like to define ableism or should I go ahead?
I'll just go ahead really quickly and then you do the two other sections. So ableism is really just the idea that there exist social prejudices against people with disabilities or who are perceived to have disabilities. So when somebody sees a person that has a disability and just interprets that as being seen as somehow inferior to someone who does not have a disability. Katerina?
Yeah, and so ableism is really valuing the able-bodied over people with disabilities. So when you think about what is internalized ableism, it is when you internalize those messages that you see in society that you as a person with a disability are less valuable and less worthy than people who are able-bodied. And when you believe this message and it influences your way you think and your decisions, you might not even consciously know that you have this within you because we're kind of programmed by what we see and what we hear, and even who gets spotlighted, for example, in advertising, and who's visible, who's on our TV screens, who's in our movies. So I think it's a very real thing that can impact so many of us with disabilities. And so bringing that into awareness and actively counteracting that is really important. So I think as a person with a disability that is invisible most of the time, I'm wearing my hair down, people might not see my hearing aids, or I'm not using my blind cane in that moment, there could be no awareness or understanding that I have a disability. I can kind of see both sides sometimes of what is it like to have people assume that you're able-bodied versus assume, oh, she has a disability. And I think that one thing that is really challenging is just how to change the narrative about people with disabilities in our society. People struggle with discrimination, not being hired for jobs, and there are just so many negative messages about what we're capable of. And also what it even means to need accommodations, that I think from an internalized ableism perspective, I used to feel like I was going to bother someone if I asked for help or if I needed something to be able to participate fully in a meeting. So I had to really change the narrative for myself. It's not that I'm going to make someone else do extra and I'm bothering them and I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't speak up. It's that by having an accommodation, I'm included, I can add to the meeting. I can bring my full self, that I have something they're going to miss out on. And I'm also going to shortchange myself as a person by not being able to participate. So I think it's just something to really work on. Mariela, I know you're going to share a little bit as well.
Absolutely. So I think it's also, hold on a second, let me scroll up right here. So ableism is really very much also ingrained into the very fabric of our society. And as a person with a disability, so internalized ableism also happens when you have the ability to do something that is called passing. You okay, Katarina? Are you okay? Okay.
Remy came to give me more water, and I was just.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I was like, Oh,
I'm like so
somebody-
parched right now, though.
Sorry, my
All
face
right,
smells all.
so lost my train of thought right there. But anyway, basically, internalized ableism is so ingrained into the very fabric of our society, just the way that we hire and the way that we apply for jobs and the way that we interview. Because if you really think about it, if I or Katarina go into a job interview, we put our hair down, we're able to talk, we're able to have a great conversation. Maybe we meet at the bar and we, have some jokes and we're able to just have that conversation. Maybe after the bar, we decide to go to the club during an interview. And that is how you get jobs. If you're working for like a really cool startup kind of company, I don't think that that's the case for every job. That would be a really cool way to go to a job. You go to an interview and then you end up at the club. That would be awesome. But the ability to be able to transition between those spaces really comes with a certain degree of privilege that is afforded to people that can pass their disabilities, where they don't need those special accommodations. And so in the past, I have had people who have told me that they would not have hired me if they had known that I had a disability or that I needed an accommodations budget. That is the reality of the professional world that I have faced. And that is as someone that went to NYU, that has worked in a myriad of jobs, that has a ton of experience. That is still the type of discrimination that I face getting into the door. Employers are scared about hiring people with disabilities because they don't know about services, because they have all these fears and concerns and just lack of exposure, which is really what we are trying to change here, just really change the narrative. And I think it's also very important for us to acknowledge that nobody really wants to be like the hero that you don't need services, that you don't need accommodations. People want to feel included in their workplaces. People want to feel like their opinions matter and that they're going to be taken care of. And so when a person with a disability comes into the workplace and says, I need accommodations, and as an employer, you don't honor that accommodation or you don't even make an effort to accommodate that person, you make the world more difficult. You make it more of a requirement for the person with a disability to pass, to hide, to not make it obvious that they need something. So don't do that. With that said, Katarina.
So thank you, Maria, for sharing your experiences in the workplace. We are going to talk a little bit now about Chicas Talk Disability and our platform that we have together. So Chicas Talk Disability is a bi-weekly conversation on disability from our perspective as two disabled Latina professional women. And we cover different topics. Our goal is to create a space for community building and group dialogue. It's really important to us to create a safe space where people can feel seen and heard and validated. Some of the topics that we have discussed include allyship with the Black community. We had a panel on police interactions with the disability community, which is very insightful. We talked about accessible meetings in the workplace and provided recommendations for meeting leaders and meeting participants. We also spoke about, we had a workshop where we shared information on how to ace the job interview as a person with a disability. And we talked about accommodations and the tricky part of asking for accommodations. What do lawyers recommend? And so that was very informative for the attendees, and we learned a lot as well in preparing for that topic. One other really wonderful conversation we had was about the cost of disabilities, both mental and monetary. Because if you are someone with a disability, you know that there is a mental burden on a regular basis of navigating your disability, of any effort that you have to make to go between spaces or interact with other people in your life, that are always daily kind of challenges that relate to your disability. And then on top of that, there are a lot of things that are not covered by health insurance. Having a disability can be very expensive. So these are some of the topics that we covered in Chicas Talk Disability, and we'll really try to think about what are the conversations that we want to see happening. And instead of kind of looking for them, we decided we are the ones that are going to create this conversation, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to do what we want to see, be the creators. So Mariela is going to talk a little bit about why we even started Chicas Talk Disability.
All right, so in addition to all of the things that we talk about on Chicas Talk Disabilities, the okay days, the hard days, in addition to it being a place where we can really be vulnerable and acknowledge the challenges that we have, we also created it to be a space where we can focus on solutions and problem solving, on creating community, on, figuring it out. That's what we're about here. We're all about solutions. And so, oh boy, my mouth. And I love that about Chicas Talk Disability because it's kind of like the one day of the week where I really focus on something that just is about solving my everyday problems. Because I know when I figure out my problems, I'm not just figuring out problems for myself, I'm also figuring out problems that other people are having. For example, last week, there was a fire in my building. So take a moment to process this. I was in the bedroom. Andy had stepped out of the apartment to go to the supermarket. And the fire is going off in the building. And I'm in the bathroom folding clothes. And then Andy comes and he comes to the bathroom and he's like, you didn't hear that. Oh, what is it that you said, honey? He said, there's a fire. And I'm like, what do you mean there's a fire? And then you said, you don't hear that. What do you say? He says, go check. So then I go from my bathroom, open the door. There's people like running out the building. Firemen are coming up. And I'm just freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, I didn't hear that sound. And it was really scary because if I had been sleeping, for example, and Andy had gone out to hang out with his friends and there was a real fire and I was sleeping, that was scary. But I figured out a couple of solutions already. Like I'm working on my Philips Hue doorbell, which is connected to my my Samsung doorbell, which is connected to my Philips Hue light bulbs, so that when the neighbors knock on the door, the lights will blink. So that next time, if there's a fire, I'll have that as a precaution. And I'm also making a plan to talk to my fire department so that they know that there is someone in my apartment building that has a hearing disability in my apartment. So that if there ever, God forbid, was a fire, they would know I'm here. So I'm taking the precautions to really be proactive about my hearing disability. And that is what Chicas Talk Disability is about. It's about creating conversations about these difficult and scary things. It's about creating spaces to validate our experiences and get feedback from other people who have these same fears and these same concerns, and there's no space to talk about it. It's really about encouraging other people to also self-advocate and ask for the things that they need. And really, at the end of the day, our entire community for Chicas Talk Disability is open. It's really about creating a space where I feel heard and seen, where Catarina feels heard and seen, where we work together with other people to figure out how we're going to do interpreting and captioning during a meeting. So we created a template now for how people can do free conference calls that have an interpreter and captioning. That is what Chicas Talk Disability is about. And I hope that each one of you goes ahead and subscribes to our newsletters and joins the Center for Independent Living community. We're gonna put the chat right here on the right-hand corner. Go ahead and subscribe so that you can stay in the loop with this stuff. Catarina, where are we taking Chicas Talk Disability?
So in the future, we right now have paused our bi-weekly events, but we're coming back and we're going to kick off our next event on October 14th for the like almost the last day of Hispanic Heritage Month, because we want to make sure we have something there. Chicas Talk Disability, we're going to talk about Latinidad and disability, and what does it mean to have both of those identities and share our experiences. So that is going to be really exciting. From that point on, we will be resuming this bi-weekly cadence. So every other week, there will be a different topic, an opportunity to join us and participate in the community. We are also going to be continuing public speaking, offering workshops, sharing our message online. On Instagram, we are always sharing videos, tools, resources, and storytelling. The power of storytelling is huge. Like when you tell stories, I think people really understand and they can relate. So Mariela is sharing how you can follow us on Instagram, how you can sign up for our newsletter, and we really hope to see some of you joining us for our future events. We also want to hear from anybody in this community about what they want to see. What do you want to see talked about, and what is important to you, and what are those things that are in your head that you wish could be actual conversations that you see in the world. We have taken suggestions in the past, and it's been so helpful and informative because we really are trying to add value. It's super important to us. So I think we're already seeing an impact from these conversations. We've gotten great feedback, and our goal is to continue this impact and to continue growing as a community. I also just want to say that on a personal level, by stepping up and hosting these types of conversations, I have then had to hold myself accountable for being an advocate for myself. So sometimes I've had a situation recently where I was taking an Italian class that was not accessible. The instructor wasn't listening, and I had to push myself. Like, I'm doing Chicas Talk Disability. I cannot let up on this. I have to advocate, and I'm advocating at my workplace, and it's actually increased my advocacy so much. So it's been really wonderful. So we're looking forward to having y'all join us. And now we're going to move into some audience Q&A conversation time, and Haley and Juan are going to be moderating. So back to you all, Haley and Juan.
Can we switch interpreters now, please, if you wouldn't mind?
Yes. All right, I've typed it into the chat. I'm going to be posting the questions in the chat as well as verbalizing them. So if anybody has a question, please just type it into the chat, and then I will read that, okay, to be answered. And the first question we have is, how can micro-influencers be a catalyst for change in our ever-evolving world of technology?
I feel like, Mariela, that's all you. I don't know.
Girl, so many. I think so many ways. I think just honestly, my mentality with this kind of stuff is start where you are with what you have. Do what you can, like in this moment. Don't think, oh, in 1 year, our strategic goal is to hire or do X, Y, Z. Yes, those things are good. But start right now in this moment. Go on Instagram, follow micro-influencers, figure out if they're doing trainings, find out if they do speaker events, host events like this in your community. Like all of these things will take you like 5 minutes. Like literally you go on Instagram, you type in deaf, hearing disability, a whole bunch of people will come up, including the recently launched Chicas Talk Disability. I think we launched on Instagram today, so go ahead and follow us. It's not up and fancy yet. We just like launched it this afternoon, okay? But go ahead and follow us there. Follow Katerina and myself at Blindish Latina and Project Hearing, and engage with us, because change costs money. change costs money, change costs influence, change costs like time and partnership. So reach out to us and let's make it happen. That would be my take. Katarina?
Okay, so I will add on to this. One thing that I see Mariela doing all the time is talking about specific tools and resources. And through videos, she's showing people real life applications and solutions for problems that she's faced. So when she's amplifying a solution that's worked for her, then all of a sudden she's showing allies and she's showing people watching her videos like, oh, I can use that too. And it looks relatable, it looks fun because of her personality, and it's easy to kind of learn in that way. And so I love that approach and really talking a lot about solutions like technology. From my side, what I feel like is really exciting is by getting engaged in storytelling on Instagram and sharing, I've been really focusing on people like understanding what is going on in my head and situations that are challenging for me that they may not think twice about. And I have noticed that friends, colleagues, family, they've said to me, like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing your story. Like, I didn't know about this. For example, the idea that blindness is a spectrum, a lot of people don't know about that. A lot of people think you're black, you don't see anything. So they're very confused when I'm out with my blind cane, using my cell phone, you know, like stopping, and there's really a lack of awareness. So I think that through being someone that is authentic and real, and, you know, this term micro-influencer, it's really a person who has other people that they're connected to. And I think you have the opportunity to make change by increasing awareness. And you also have an opportunity to just like connect and share your story. So I think that you can make a lot of impact depending on whatever your approach is. And even if just one person, if you're pushing your HR department to, for example, use closed captions, that's a huge impact. You can be one person advocating for a lot of people who probably aren't speaking up. And I'm currently doing that at my workplace because there are a lot of people use Zoom and don't integrate closed captioning. And I'm looking forward to seeing a widespread use of closed captioning and platforms that are used for video meetings, because that's the way we're going now. And everybody can be part of that impact and making online meetings accessible wherever you are participating and engaging in.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. We've even helped here in CILSF, helping with different community organizations and revamping their materials to be more accommodating and accessible, as well as adding captioning into their approach with everything. So that's absolutely advocacy. The more people that stand up and speak out, that's how change happens. I have another question that has been entered into the chat. It's, how do you engage decision makers and elected officials to embrace a culture they don't know much about? For example, deaf culture, and what can we do to make them pay attention or listen?
This is easy. Make it easy. Make it easy. Like, I think that one of the things that I believe in is that people are lazy. If people can slack off, they will. People want things to be easy. It's why Amazon is so successful. I mean, one-click shopping, hello. People want things to be as easy as possible for them to do it. So I think that with tools like Instagram, for example, and Facebook and Twitter, those platforms do not provide the automatic captioning functionality that you see that we're using here on Google Meet. If I create an Instagram story, I have to go through at least 2 different applications that I have to pay for to make those videos caption. In addition to also adding an interpreter, if that's something I wanted to do. I need to be able to know all the skills that I need to be able to make the process of creating a fully 100% accessible video accessible. So for this video that we are making now, we're going to make it accessible because it already has the captioning green. We have an interpreter, and I'm able to see everyone. We have chat. It's all a system. Instagram is not Google Meet. The functionalities of Instagram are difficult, yet more people are using Instagram every day than they are Google Meet. And Instagram has not incorporated the functionality of Google Meet in its platform. Why? Because that includes a lot of data, that includes a lot of manpower and money. And people are not paying attention to accessibility right now, to the point that we could get all of these technology in the next 6 months if technological companies wanted to. Maybe in the next year, because we already have all of the technology we need now. So I think if we can just make it easier to incorporate ASL interpreters into our events, if there was some sort of system like a Craigslist store or a Facebook store or an Instagram store, and you say, hey, I need an interpreter for like right now to like closed caption my video. And then within 2 minutes, I have my video closed caption and with the interpreter on the side. That technology can be created and nobody's focusing on it. And that's what I really am trying to push. I want that to be possible because it is possible. That is the future I imagine. And that is the future we need 1 year from now. Like, come on, like, let's make it happen. So that's my take on that.
I will add on to that specifically about elected officials. In one of my roles at work, I have had to have meetings with elected officials. And elected officials want, if you're having a meeting with someone, they want to know that there's someone from their district in the meeting. So that it's tied to people that are going to vote for them. And you really have to impress upon them the kind of strength in numbers. The fact that there's a certain percentage of the population that has a disability. Like, that's something that you want to bring up to them. You have a significant amount of your constituents that are affected by this. And having specific ask is really important, because if you're just there, you probably only get 15 minutes. Sometimes you don't get to meet with the elected official. You're meeting with their staff member. And, you know, you really have to keep being a loud voice and impress upon people what the specific asks are, what kind of impact will it have, because they're always looking for publicity and attachment to some kind of impact that they can talk about that they were part of. But a lot of times legislation is written by the interest groups. So an organization could write a piece of disability legislation that they want to see. And then you go to the elected officials and look for allies and try to engage with them. So when you're trying to work with elected officials, they don't have a lot of time. They want to have a good recognition for what they're doing. And you want to make sure that you're connecting to the voters in their district. So if you're not a voter, bringing other people along who are voters who can say that their constituents is really important.
I just want to go ahead and really comment on the dynamic of Katarina. So Katarina is very pragmatic and she focuses on the little details. And I'm here like, I want this grand idea and this grand application, and it needs to have an interpreter and ASL, and like, it needs to have captioning, and it needs to have this and that. That's me. Katarina's like, this is how we're going to make it happen. We have to create a proposal to our elected officials, and it needs to be like 15 minutes because this is what they're going to look at. That is so accurate of our dynamic. Like, go. Anyway.
I love it. That's what makes a good team. You got to balance each other out. So we only have a few minutes left. And earlier, way back when we first started, somebody asked when and where will this recorded event be available? Do you guys have an answer for that?
So it should be available. I think I want to give myself a week just to edit it. So can we count on it being available next Tuesday? We'll share the link with the Center for Independent Living team. and then you guys share it out with everyone who's registered. Is that reasonable? Awesome.
All right, great. Well, we only have a few minutes left. So did you guys want to say some closing words?
I think if anybody's interested, I'm really open to get feedback on people who are using the Google Meet platform for the first time. So if anybody wants to stay after the meeting to talk about that, I'm open to that. Or not after the meeting, after the event. Okay.
I just want to thank everyone for being here, and I think that it's really such an honor to be connecting and participating, having our true organization coming together. So if you are a person with a disability, I hope that you continue to engage in these conversations and you just continue on your journey. Wherever you are in your journey with disability, you are perfect and you are right where you are supposed to be. Don't put pressure on yourself to advance to mega self-empowerment if you're just not there yet. It's totally fine. So I would urge you to be accepting of where you are and continue learning and growing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us that were involved today. I'll post the link to our agency in the chat as well. But it was such a pleasure to have all of you here today. And the fact that you're here means that you want to learn and continue to grow, because no matter how much we all already know, we still have room to learn and to have our minds changed and to just be ever evolving as the culture always is as well.
Awesome. So I think we're going to close out now, and I'm going to be playing Bad Bunny. No? Or it's yes. Okay, I'm going to put the clean version. Let me see if they have a clean version. Okay, so like clean lyrics. Right. And with that said, we